Hello, everyone.
Hi, Internet.
Rich Stroffolino is here. And I'm assuming Roger Chang will be here soon.
He will be here precisely when he intends to.
Yes, Roger is very
Yes.
much like a wizard in that respect.
Hmm.
He is
Also
never
looks great in
early
gray.
nor late. He does. Or white,
Eh, just
depending on
gets
if
dirty
he's
all the time.
recently fought a Balrog.
I feel like the wizard can only afford the white, once they move it up the food chain because they got to clean it all the time.
Yeah.
The gray is the
Well,
working man's wizard.
can't magic away the dirt?
It's magic is used very sparingly, and
Expelliarmus.
Accio, Mr. Clean Magic Eraser.
Bleacherama.
It's not Latiny enough. You have to really Latin it up.
Yeah.
Chloroximus, perhaps.
Blanco Londorum.
That was. Did you see the Fantastic Beasts movie film?
Yes, I did.
I really wanted. I appreciate the glimpses into the American wizarding world, but I really wanted. I just wanted more of it. I mean, I guess they have to string a story along with it, but for
Oh
like
yeah,
what seemed like
absolutely.
a is that a one-off, or are they doing more of those?
No, they're gonna do two more apparently.
Well, I hope I get some more world building. I'm a sucker for that.
Yeah. They I think that I wonder if when they decided to do three, if they held back on some of the trimmings
Yeah.
to save it for future movies.
I'm very interested because I had an entire theory of that I spent a year of unemployment developing about the physics of squibs in that world and
Uh-huh.
what it implied about embodiment with magic. It was very interesting to me only.
I like it. I like it. I went to Universal Studios out here in LA shortly before Fantastic Beasts, so I was kind of primed up on Harry Potter. And I
Yeah,
enjoyed the
that
movie. I don't think it was as good as the mainline ones, but I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed the characters. I think were fun. Oh, do you have a title and all my stuff for that for introductions and stuff?
Good question. I don't. What
Okay.
would you like me to refer to you as?
Content coordinator for Gestalt IT.
Like that?
Hold on. I have you in little window with the thing here. That looks good.
Cool. Did you have a lovely President's Day?
I did. I celebrated like I always do, going over the accomplishments of Grover Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
celebrating
As you should.
his reduction of the tariff, and disliking the election of Rutherford B. Hayes. That's how I celebrate.
Uh, I always spare a thought for Franklin Pierce
Best
if I
hair
can.
ever
Yeah.
of any president.
And I try to listen to They Might Be Giants' James K. Polk.
Classic. Died
Yeah.
of chronic diarrhea.
And then in the post show for Chord Killers, I sang the president's song, naming all the presidents from
Ah.
Washington through Ford. And the only reason I stopped at Ford is I learned the song in 1975.
I was gonna say, did they write that for the centennial, bicentennial?
No, it was a thing they did in first grade. We would do it. I feel like every morning. It can't have been every morning. That would have gotten ridiculous. But it was to the tune of Yankee Doodle. And we would sing the last names of the presidents. And I still remember it.
Of course. I remember a song about coffee from the second grade.
What was the song about coffee?
It was, I will not sing it, but I will speak the lyrics. COFFEE, coffee is not for me. It's a drink that people wake up with, that it makes you nervous, is no myth. Slave to a coffee cup, they can't give coffee up.
Wow. It's like anti-coffee
Yeah.
propaganda.
It's like something weird left over from Prohibition or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Coffee, it's bad for you. Dude, that's the opposite of my experience growing up, where Mark Jurgena and I ordered coffee at our first communion dinner as a joke, and they brought us basically milk with a splash of coffee in it, but we thought
Felt pretty awesome.
Yeah. We thought we were pretty styling. Oh, hello, Roger.
Sorry.
Nice of you to join us.
No, you can't hear me.
No, we can hear you, Roger.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, for some reason I was losing a connection, but I think it's just a loose cable.
Yeah. All right.
Apologies.
No problem. You have control, and we are ready to roll. I'll give you a minute to open your
Rhyming not intended.
Not avoided, though. I'm going to be honest. Kind of saw it coming, and it's like, why not?
You accepted the will of the universe. I respect this.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. What am I doing?
I don't know. What are you doing?
Da-na-na-na-na-na. Apologies, chat room. Everything got foobarred for some reason. Not sure how. Alright, let me hide.
All right. You good? Here we go. Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, February 21st, 2017. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, very happy to have alongside Rich Straffolino, who is content coordinator for Gestalt IT, but also occasional co-host or host of Daily Tech Headlines. How's it going, Rich?
It's going great. It's a beautiful, cloudy but warm day here in Cleveland, and looking forward to getting into the tech news.
You are also Rich from lovely Cleveland, for those who pay attention to the email segment on this show. You wear so many hats. You write headlines for Daily Tech Headlines. You occasionally fill in as host, and you're the content coordinator for Gestalt IT. How do you do it?
I pretty much love myself. It's all motivated by self-love.
Excellent. Well, we're going to talk about a Gartner report about the idea that we may be entering the post-app era, which honestly, that itself is not that controversial. Apps are not new anymore, so it makes sense that we would be moving into some other era. But what that era is going to be, Gartner had a couple ideas about, and they seem to make sense. So Rich and I are going to kick those around. But shall we start with some top stories?
We shall.
It's official. Verizon and Yahoo are still getting partially hitched. Verizon announced on Tuesday it has agreed to pay $350 million less to acquire Yahoo's core business. That will make the final total approximately $4.48 billion instead of 4.8. Verizon and the parts of Yahoo that will remain after the sale, because if you remember, Yahoo is only selling most of its business, including its name, to Verizon. There's a holding company that's going to be left behind with stock in Yahoo Japan and Alibaba. And that holding company, which will be called Altaba, is going to share any costs of litigation that result from Yahoo's recently revealed data breaches. Verizon and Altaba will split those costs 50-50. Yahoo revealed several large data breaches since the deal with Verizon was first announced in July. And Rich, a lot of people were wondering if Verizon wouldn't just back away entirely.
Yeah, that is some keen negotiating there to kind of get that provision in there, and really gives them some indemnity, down the line if anything further comes to light. But can we all agree Altaba?
I mean, you want something that is not going to be confused with Yahoo, because the remaining part will have nothing that we recognize as Yahoo. It won't have the website or any of the properties, and at that point, you're just fishing around for something that isn't trademarked already.
Well, yeah, I feel like they just put in like an engine into a domain register, and that was the first result.
Yeah, it's in the A's, so it's Yeah, that one's not bad. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did because there's no branding. This is a holding company. They don't really care as long as it's easy enough to spell on the documents that they're filing with the SEC. Meanwhile, this means Verizon will get Yahoo's huge audience. Yahoo still has a large audience. It will still be able to combine Yahoo ad tech with the AOL ad tech it owns, combine content, and we're going to start thinking once again, instead of will Verizon still buy them, into what is Verizon going to do with Yahoo?
And in terms of a sprawling conglomerate, maybe not of the same scale as Alphabet, but I'm interested to see if some other corporations and big companies will be looking to kind of bring back these giant media and service conglomerates that maybe have gone out of vogue recently.
Yeah, Verizon, all about ad tech to make the money, but to sell those ads, you need content, and Verizon's going to have a huge library of content. I'm very curious if they can revive some of Yahoo's more successful content sections. People still go to the Yahoo homepage. They still read Yahoo News. There's some very good stuff being done there that just isn't surfaced very well, or isn't top of mind anyway.
And Tumblr is part of the deal, right?
Yeah, it is.
Tumblr to me is like the great untapped asset of a very specific market that would respond well to advertisers, very young market, and seems to still have a lot of goodwill, and seems at least to have. I don't hear, when I hear about like poisonous communities, I don't hear Tumblr necessarily invoked.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's an untapped opportunity still.
It's aging. It needs a little love to stay relevant. It's no live journal though. It's it's still good.
R.I.P.
By the way, Poodle Puncher asked the hard question: who gets to keep the Yahoo yodel? Verizon will get that.
Yahoo, indeed. Well, messaging app WhatsApp updated its messaging app for Android, iOS, and Windows with a status feature, letting users share pictures, GIFs or GIFs, and videos as a status, which expire after 24 hours. That is very novel. You can add emojis, text, and drawings too. WhatsApp originally launched in 2009 as a way to share statuses and pivoted to messaging later, so maybe just a return to form or the obvious Snapchat clone.
Facebook is just out there like, you know what? On Facebook, we're going to do Snapchat-like stuff. Oh, and you know what you're doing on Instagram? A lot of Snapchat-like stuff. And you know what? We should do that with WhatsApp. We're just going to do some Snapchat-like stuff. How do you like me now, Snapchat? We're like coming at you from three directions.
It does make me wonder how much crossover there is between these different, between like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and Instagram. Because if there is a lot of crossover between those, I see this as muddying the waters. But at least for me personally, I've been trying to get people to use WhatsApp because I've just wanted to try it out, and I literally know like one person, and they never use it. And so I'm kind of away from it. But everyone uses Instagram. And even people that think Snapchat is dumb amongst my friends have posted a couple of Instagram stories just to try it out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people,
what the use case is.
A lot of people may have that reaction if they don't use WhatsApp, but WhatsApp has 1 billion users. I use it for a particular group of people when we were traveling overseas because we knew we had data, but we weren't sure if text messages were really going to be reliable. So we just used WhatsApp. And that worked really well and kind of got us into the habit of talking to each other on WhatsApp, even though now we're back in the US and have each other's text message addresses, right? So if you get pushed into the scenario, it does have you start using it. And I could see if you're one of those people who uses it regularly and you have a lot of contacts there, sharing a status update with your friends would be cool because it's not I'm posting this up on Twitter or even Snapchat, which is becoming a more mass, like people are following celebrities. WhatsApp, at least with this implementation at this moment, is very much about I'm just posting it to my friends.
And I do kind of have to wonder though, because unlike Snapchat, you can do the Snapchat memories or whatever you call it, like your scrapbook or whatever they call it to post things that you've already taken.
Yeah, memories.
But it's kind of hard to, it's not the easiest thing to use like everything that Snapchat ever puts out there. If WhatsApp makes this too easy to just put GIFs and videos and other weird things, I have to wonder if it's going to feel spammy for people trying it out. Whereas like the appeal of Snapchat is that it's live. Yeah, it's not the most professional. You didn't take 9 takes of it, but there's this of the momentness to it. And I wonder if WhatsApp will be able to capture that if you're able to very easily post things you've already done.
Yeah, you do have to go into a separate tab which mitigates against that, but also has the problem of, well, but what about when I, want people to see my thing and they don't go into the tab? Do I have to actually message them directly now?
Yeah.
Qualcomm announced more details about its Snapdragon X20 modem that can handle up to, you're not going to get this in practice, but up to 1.2 gigabits per second wireless download speeds and 150 megabit per second upload. The modem uses carrier aggregation, so it bonds multiple carrier frequency ranges to manage that download speed. It's not getting it directly, and it has to be supported by the carrier. So have a couple things that need to happen before you're going to see these modems in play. And even then, it's not going to always give you gigabit, but it's still going to be faster, LTE. X20 also supports the 3.5 gigahertz airspace used by CB radio, which could give you some interesting applications in creating your own private LTE network over citizen band radio. Samples are available to device makers now, with the first products with the X20 expected in 2018. And by then, more carriers, I think Telstra already will support this, but more carriers will be supporting it. Qualcomm also announced its Snapdragon 210 chips, which have integrated LTE support, will work with Google's Android Things Internet of Things operating system. When Google announced Android Things, it did not list Qualcomm as a partner, but Qualcomm very quickly afterwards said, we are going to support it, and now they do.
Be interested to see how this impacts someone like or Project Fi, which already is kind of doing multiple carriers natively like that. I'm very interested to see if they could take advantage of something like that.
Yeah, could you get Google to put a Snapdragon X20 modem in a Google device that works with Project Fi and is there some marriage between the two ways of bonding things? One's more of a selection rather than a bonding, right? But yeah, I would like to see, as someone who has a Project Fi phone, the ability to do that for sure.
And that CB radio band, do you think that could be used for as a supplement for home Wi-Fi? Having that run, not having you're doing like private LTE just for your house or something like that. I wonder.
Yeah, I think there's probably some more niche uses for that will be out there, but it's an interesting thing. I was thinking about it in emergency situations, particularly if you needed to create an ad hoc LTE network out of nowhere. Granted, not every phone's going to have the X20 modem in it, but this would be a way.
It's Qualcomm though, so they will get into a ton of devices.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're operating a team where like we need to be able to keep in touch with each other, everybody here take these X20 devices with the X20 modem, then that would make sense.
All right. Well, Harris Poll released its 2017 U.S. Reputation Quotient report. Say that 3 times fast. The report saw Samsung fall from number 7 in 2016 to number 49 in 2017. Yikes. Overall, though, the company's reputation quotient still fell within the very good criteria, which may be put to the test, as Korea's Hankyung.com reports Samsung will sell refurbished Note 7s with smaller batteries in places like Vietnam and India. Samsung has about 2.5 million Note 7s, which could be sold in new cases with 3,000 to 3,200 milliamp hour batteries in place of the original 3,500 milliwatt hour battery. It's interesting to me. Wasn't necessarily the capacity, right? It was the thermal shielding and the diodes were exposed and hitting each other. Is this just going to give it more room to put in more shielding, like the implication?
That would be my guess, is they can use a smaller battery and a different case and just avoid the problem altogether and say, okay, we're not going to try to shove this thing in there, but we can still use the processors and the internals. And I'm going to guess they changed the name. I'm going to guess this Note 7 is not marketed under the name Note 7. They come up with another name so that people don't run across it and go, wait a minute, that's the one that explodes. Because honestly, they're not going to sell a lot of them if they put them out there as Note 7. Although this Harris poll does show that people have not entirely lost faith in Samsung. You don't want to be too strict in these numbers because it's very subjective on reputation, but they give you a general sense of it. And this says Samsung took a hit, as you would expect them to, but didn't take a fatal hit.
Well, to put it in perspective, Volkswagen, who has had their own share of scandals over the past year or two, is like at the very bottom, and they're 20 points below where Samsung is. So, and companies like Verizon and Yahoo actually fall lower in terms of this reputation quotient, looking at it this year, than Samsung, which had, very public. I mean, you literally had people on airplanes warning you, do not have this phone on you ever on an airplane, and they took a big hit, but not in the dumps. It's very interesting.
Well, that shows how strong the Samsung brand was to begin with. It shows that even with the flub and the second recall, they never were perceived as trying to hoodwink you. I think some people thought that they were incompetent because of the need for the second recall, but they tried very hard to handle it in transparent fashion. And I think the announcement of their findings in January probably helped a lot of people to say, okay, you made a mistake. We don't like you as much as we used to because of that, but at least you're willing to admit that mistake and try to prevent it in the future. Whereas Volkswagen is perceived as, you guys were just cheating and tried to cover it up.
Yeah, for years. Yeah, it is a slightly different situation.
The Kenya Bankers Association have launched something called PesaLink. It's an interbank transfer service meant to compete with those popular mobile money transfer services like M-Pesa. You hear about M-Pesa all the time. It's a way to just transfer money using your mobile phone without even having to have a bank account. Airtel Money is another example. The new system allows for transfers from one bank account to another, so you do need a bank account, but you can do it in real time without needing to use a mobile money wallet. And when you use a mobile money wallet, there's transfer fees that go along with that. So theoretically, this could be cheaper than using, say, M-Pesa, although there's a long way to go to eat into that M-Pesa market. M-Pesa has 85% of the person-to-person money transfer market. Alongside with this, international money transfer service TransferWise has introduced a Facebook Messenger bot for transfers between Europe, Canada, the US, and Australia. So a lot of you already know this, but getting into the mobile money market is something that a lot of companies want to do to take a piece of a growing market, but also to say, if you're a bank, we have expertise in this. We can't blow this and let somebody like M-Pesa just dominate it forever.
Well, and this is what, kind of the good side of disruption looks like, of bringing a service that's incredibly valuable to people. You stated you still need a bank account, so it doesn't totally disrupt everything, but to bring that to the ability to transfer money easily wherever you are is huge for a lot of people. So, kind of cool to see.
And TransferWise does things like you can set an alert. If you're somebody who travels between these companies a lot and you want to know when the euro is at its most favorable, having a bot that tells you like, hey, we know you've got a trip coming up in a month and the euro just hit a really favorable moment that you set your alert for. You might want to change your money now. That can save you a lot of money.
It's really cool. Well, in pro-simian news, scientists have published a paper in the journal Biomed Central Zoology on a system called Lemur Face ID, which can distinguish individual lemurs with 97% accuracy. Researchers trained the system with 462 photographs of 80 lemurs in Madagascar and 190 images of other lemur species. This would allow tracking of the endangered species without needing to trap and tag the animals. Pretty cool. Don't have to have weird earrings anymore for your lemurs, I guess.
Yeah, or sometimes they're in captivity, and all of these, by the way, are in captivity, so they're going to have to do a lot more training to make this work in the wild. But in captivity, they would look at scars or injuries or patterns on the hair. Things that weren't necessarily reliable all the time could change over time, and this facial recognition looks for patterns that don't change over time as easily. And a really, really good example of facial recognition being used not to sell you ads for once. They're not even selling the lemurs ads.
Yeah, it just kind of cool. Although 462 photographs of 80 lemurs, I guess that's all the lemurs they had in captivity in Madagascar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it just seems like 5-6 photos each. I don't know.
Well, I think this is a test run, right? Yeah. They're like, okay, we've got these 80 lemurs. Let's get a bunch of photographs of them and then a bunch of photographs of not them and see if the computer can figure out who's who. And 97% accuracy on that amount is very promising for being able to track this in the wild.
And again, the idea is you can extend it to other endangered species and just set up, it'd be awesome just to be able to set up cameras, to track migrating birds or, a bunch of other different species and not have to have people out there and disrupting, their lives and their ecosystems. So that's pretty cool.
Not to mention, it's going to be really welcomed on Lemurgram and Weimer. And
yeah, I'm not sure what it says about the lemur, the youth lemur of today. It's a sad statement about
Just
morality.
so obsessed, especially
You know.
as you were telling me before the show, their scent organs are in their hands.
They're in their wrist, actually, and
their
so
wrist, yeah.
when they're walking, they will actually click their wrist, and it'll like literally like shoot out gross, disgusting smelling lemur scent.
Which is
And,
horrible when you're trying to take a selfie with a lemur.
Yeah, and also very sharp claws, and I believe nocturnal.
Well,
I think so.
So low light photography will also.
Yeah. Yes, a beautiful, disgusting species.
Folks, to get all the tech headlines each day in less than 10 minutes, subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com, as well as this show, which you're already subscribed to. Let's get into our main story. All right, so Gartner, rating the use of apps, found that 83% of people still use social media apps, right? That's still the dominant app, but it's down 2%. Use of video apps down 2%. Use of maps down 3%. The number two, or tied for number two really, use of apps is messaging apps. That one is up 3%. And shopping apps up 4% is number 4. Number 5 is that up and coming personal assistant category, the voice personal assistant. 35% use it, so it's not really dominant yet, but it is number 5, and it's up 5% from 2015. Now, put that against the fact that more people are using fewer apps. 33% of the people surveyed use 6 to 10 apps a month, and that's on the high end, and that's down 6.2% from 2016. What they're finding is that we just find a couple of apps we like, and we use those, and that's about it. Some of us power users get up to 6 to 10 of those, but most of us just use a couple and we live in them. And of course, the majority of us living in them are social media, but the one on the rise getting more people to use them is the messaging app. Facebook Messenger is 81% of those apps in the US and UK. WhatsApp is 61%. So Facebook owning both of those is doing great in the US and the UK. In China, WeChat is even more dominant, with 95% of the usage of messaging apps in that country. 72% of the people surveyed use messaging apps once a day. Their preference is to share with close friends rather than share with the wider public. And here's where people are saying, have we entered a post-app era? Gartner has floated this out a couple of times. Are messaging apps becoming the new platform? WeChat, for instance, hosts ride-hailing services, banking services, but also baking services because they do food ordering as well. And virtual personal assistants, the VPAs, are on the rise as well. And Siri and Google are the most used virtual personal assistants in the US and the UK. People using those mostly for weather, finding nearby places, and news. But users are starting to go to those virtual personal assistants instead of apps to get info. So Rich, whether it be moving into messaging or leapfrogging messaging to virtual personal assistants, do you feel like we're moving past apps, that apps are just going to become like a web browser? It's something that's there, but we don't really get obsessed about it.
Well, I think Google has an interesting approach to where apps are going. They're trying to do those instant apps where you just click on a link and it kind of artificially does really quick, just like almost like a single function instance of an app that gives you some native functionality and it gives you a prettier UI. But then you don't have to install anything and it's gone, and you just kind of get in and out. And I think that that might be the bridge maybe over to a post-app ecosystem. But I think the other thing also comes in is that there's a lot of the apps that people enjoy using, that messaging apps are kind of taking in, are services, right? So like you said, ride hailing, ordering food, even like picture processing or picture sharing and that kind of stuff. Those are services, and the job of designing an app and designing a service are pretty different. And you can be really great at designing a service and be terrible at designing an app. And you see a lot of, at Gestalt IT, I borrow an enterprise-focused blog. And so you see a lot of these companies that can build these brilliant enterprise backends for services, and then even for a very small user case, are developing terrible, just horrible UIs. Like there's this revolution going on where like there's actual usable UIs, and it's crazy. Like people are freaking out because it's like like colored. It's amazing. It's not a command line. This is awesome.
Not IE6 anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's way easier, I think, for a lot of these companies to design a really great API that they can just throw onto any to a given interface, whether that's WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, or even unmentioned in this Gartner report was Apple's messages, which they've just kind of opened up, in small ways for stickers and some limited functionality. But I think there definitely is that conflict between design and designing like an API or a service or that kind of stuff might be another part of the genesis that, maybe not just people are disappointed with apps, but having a consistent UI goes a long way.
Yeah, this won't make sense to you if you still use text messaging, even if you use iMessage, because those apps are lagging behind in functionality. And if you, like us, are like, don't really live in WhatsApp, right? But if you live in WeChat, you live in Facebook Messenger, you're starting to see the opportunities there of, oh, I don't have to remember what app to call for a ride. I don't have to remember where my Maps app is. I don't have to keep it on a screen. I can just be in the app I'm always talking to my friends in and say, how do I get to the bakery? And it will say, oh, which bakery do you want? Click here, we'll navigate for you. And you never leave that app. That's what WeChat's doing. It's what Facebook is trying to move towards. And it's a little bit what WhatsApp is doing by adding the status update in a very, very small way, taking that first step of saying WhatsApp could be more than just text messaging to each other. So it's got a little ways to go before you see this become a big change. But we're at the beginning of this trend. And to me, virtual personal assistants just carry that through, because what I'd rather do is just tell my phone, I want this, and have it figure out where to find it. I don't even want to have to be in a messaging app and figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I think Google has an interesting idea with what they're doing. What's their Facebook, or I'm sorry, Google Assistant app, messaging app that no one uses?
Yeah, for Google Home, it's really being tied to Google Home, but you use Google Assistant on the Pixel, and it's tied into other apps as well. Yeah,
and I think that's interesting. I wonder if chatbots are kind of the weird bridge that's going to take us to fully using these virtual personal assistants. I still have a lot of issues with them. I've been trying to use Siri a lot more. I just recently switched over to an iPhone, and I've been trying to use like the Hey Siri. And I have to say, like, compared to, being on an Android phone, and it's not as full featured. It's not as, it's great for really weird specific inquiries. Like, I can't even think, like, especially when I'm working in the kitchen and I just want to shout out certain, like, what's a good substitute for oregano? Like Siri you're useless for that. Whereas Google will at least surface something interesting. I don't know exactly if this is the right form. If this call and response form that we have, I almost feel like it has to be more invasive, where instead of Alexa, only beaming home when, I'm sorry, I said the word, only for AWS services calls home, is almost to be talking constantly for it to have a true utility, a seamless utility. Because that's the problem right now, is that's not seamless. You have to wait for the beep and then do the query in that one specific instance. And I almost feel like it has to be more all-encompassing. And that's where something like a chatbot, where everything in that one chat interface is going through that bot, or theoretically could go through that bot, gives it the potential for more utility, admittedly in text. So it's slower. It's not as everywhere it needs to be. Well, and it makes me wonder, if I'm writing an API for Facebook Messenger, I'm writing an API that very easily could work as a virtual personal assistant, right? My Domino's ordering app for Facebook Messenger could easily be used by some future Facebook virtual personal assistant as well. That's something we haven't seen Facebook make much progress towards. They do have the virtual personal assistant, Facebook M. They've been holding back on it. But when Facebook finally pushes that forward and says, okay, we figured it out, it's ready, that's going to heat up this game. And the other thing we're not seeing is Amazon move to mobile, right?
Apple's virtual assistant right now is staying on the phone and hasn't moved into your home. Amazon's is in your home and hasn't moved into mobile. Only Google is really straddling both lines, as well as Microsoft's Cortana. But Cortana can't be a default on anything but a Windows phone, and we know that Windows Phone's market share is vanishing. So really, it's Google is the one that's in the most places. It's the positioned one to be in front right now. But we got to see what everybody else is going to do before this space heats up. I feel like we're looking at the beginning of both messaging apps and virtual personal assistants are going to be almost a concurrent wave of changing how we use these devices.
Yeah, I think all of them are going to, involve, some people might find this very troubling, sending more and more information to a third party, for processing to get any kind of functionality out of that. It is interesting, the two strategies where Google it's pretty typical of Android, right? Be everywhere, even if the utility of it right now is relatively low, whereas Amazon is with AWS is saying they seem very determined to build out partnerships, what they seem to be very good at doing, and bringing in content, bringing in different platforms. Right now, you have to go this weird thing where you like enter into an app within the Echo, and then you have to know like this specific alchemy of words and word soup to kind of get your thing right. But I think the partnerships are hugely valuable, so that if they do make a partnership with Google or some other, maybe with a something like Xiaomi or something like that, going with a Chinese manufacturer who's forking Android anyway and isn't going to get Google Assistant, I could see that, all of a sudden, boom, you have this giant, this giant ecosystem of support. So it's kind of a question of if Google can be everywhere and then build those partnerships on a diverse array of platforms with diverse hardware support. Admittedly, it's all going to a cloud backend, so it doesn't really matter. Or can Amazon spread out while still maintaining this kind of huge lead in partnerships? Yeah,
and making that leap to mobile is proving to be, I don't know if it's difficult, but it's something they're not moving as quickly into. They got Huawei to use Amazon Voice Services on some of their phones outside China, so I can get that service there. Why can't I decide to use it the way I can use Cortana on my iPhone? I can use it on my Android phone. Why can't I do the same with Amazon Voice Services? Why can't I have that Amazon Echo app on there? That's one thing I get frustrated with sometimes is if I use the app, I have to enter everything in by text. I'm like, I'm used to talking to her. Why can't I talk to her here instead of having to get up and go over there, or choose between getting up and going over to the Echo and talking or typing it in with my hands?
I do have to say, it is a huge shame that Windows Phone isn't a bigger platform for a lot of consumers, because Cortana, actually, I feel like on a phone, I used a Windows Phone for about 6 months, and it was the best thing about it. The app ecosystem was terrible. I really thought the UI actually was extremely limited, but Cortana was able to do things contextually within remind me to do something when I get home or something like that. And it was super smart about that kind of situational awareness. So I'm hoping Microsoft can find a way. They're doing their hubs thing. What their strategy is for getting into mobile, we'll see.
Well, thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Few messages from folks to get to before we're out of here today. First of all, congratulations to Nate Langson of Text Message, who just launched his Patreon. They are now Patreon funded. What's happening at Text Message this week, Nate?
Thanks, Tom. Or should I now say thanks, fellow Patreon creator? This week we have looked at why Nokia may be bringing back the old 3310, how the UK's mobile networks may have improved 8% since last summer, and since Amazon's Echo voice assistant has learned some new British words, we held a little quiz that I like to call How British Actually Is Amazon's Voice Assistant. That's out right now on Text Message at techpodcast.uk.
Thank you, Nate. I love this idea of putting Amazon Echo to a nationalist test.
It reminds me of the Monty Python bit of, do any of these words embarrass you?
Yes.
Shoot.
Yeah, exactly. And will Amazon Echo repeat them anyway? Send your pics to us, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. Message of the day comes from Jupe, who wrote, Tech and politics. Hold on. Don't turn off. Remember the Tamagotchi? Well, we now have Kamergachi.nl, and he's got a link to a YouTube video about it. We have upcoming elections here in the Netherlands in mid-March, and they made an app where you have to take care of one of the politicians, Tamagotchi style. The guy who came up with it is the same one who started the America First, Netherlands Second meme as well. It's a fun little app and quite popular in the Netherlands during the current election. So, hey, even if you don't have a dog in that Netherlands hunt, you could take care of one of their politicians.
That's pretty cool. Although I think won't just, if you're in the opposition, you not take care of the other person.
Yeah, you just get the other person and let them wither on the vine. And then real quickly, this is a note, especially for folks who support us on Patreon. Greetings from rainy Munich, Germany. Love the show. Longtime listener. Tom, Roger, or other wonderful person doing the feedback mails. That would be Sawyer, actually. Just a quick info in case this might have happened to others as well. I signed up and pledged $10 a month way back on January 24th, 2014. I still have the Patreon mail thanking me for the pledge. And all along, I was thinking I'm a proud co-executive producer. Well, at least since you introduced the title. So today I was curious on how to access the Patreon RSS feed with the Roundtable show. And up until now, I just used the iTunes feed. Well, guess what? Patreon said I'm not a co-executive producer after all. Even so, it said you're paying $10 a month. Why? Well, from what I can tell, it's because at some point they had to add VAT, the value-added tax for German users. So I reset my pledge to $10, which will now be 11 something, including tax, and voila, got the right back to call myself a co-executive producer. Just a heads up for anyone else, you might want to check your Patreon level and see, if you're in Europe particularly, if VAT has changed what your level is. Thank you for the heads up on that. The other thing that can happen, sometimes people signed up and didn't choose an award, or if you change the amount you're backing and you don't change the reward level, sometimes you might be left out of something.
Good FYI.
Thank you for writing in and letting us know about that. Thank you, Rich Straffolino, for joining us, for filling in for Patrick Beja, who's on vacation, a well-deserved vacation. Let folks know a little bit more about what you're doing over there at Gestalt IT.
Sure. Like I said, it's a enterprise IT focused blog. We cover the entire enterprise spectrum. So you might think, oh, what is that? So it's servers, it's networking, it's storage, it's the cloud, and kind of the weird interactions. And mobility is like the huge next kind of big burgeoning cloud and mobility are kind of the next big huge burgeoning fields of that. It gets a little technical. I think I, at least in my writing, try and keep everything relatively accessible, make it an entry point. So if you're interested in learning about containers and container orchestrations, or you're interested in hyperconverged infrastructure, which is been the new hotness for a while, or you're interested in software-defined WAN, which is like super cool, check it out, gestaltit.com. And since we were talking to a listener, or we heard an email from a listener in Germany, our sister site is Tech Field Day, which is an event that we put on. And that's a more technical focused for enterprise IT bloggers. But if you're interested in that, check it out at techfieldday.com. And we're actually at Cisco Live Europe this week. So check that out if you want some live videos of cool stuff. Some of the cool stuff there was like programmable ASICs chips. So router switches that can be the chip itself can be programmed. That totally changes the game for router switches. And a couple of companies are doing that, but Cisco's talking about it. Really cool stuff.
So wait a minute. Your German site is called Tech Field Day, and your American site is called Gestalt?
It is not a German site. It is a wholly American-owned subsidiary. We're just in Germany, in Berlin, Germany.
Got it. Okay. Yes. I was a little confused there for a second.
And I'm strongly voting to make, we have a newsletter, sign up for that. But I strongly wanted to make that called Zeitgeist, but sadly, I was vetoed on that.
Yeah, Google kind of squatted on that name too. So.
Well, yeah. So, so check it out, gestaltit.com. Tons of writing by me. And if you want a silly post that's not technical in any way, I wrote the top 5 things that you can buy that you could buy instead of Intel's new $9,000 Xeon chip.
Oh, things you can do with $9,000 instead if you don't want to.
Instead of buying a Xeon chip.
That's great.
Some of it's technical, some of it's not. So it's fun stuff.
Excellent. Go check that out. And of course, whenever you hear a really well-written headline about enterprise topics on Daily Tech Headlines, thank Rich, because he probably wrote it.
I do have an interest.
Thanks to everybody who supports the show, including Oleg Kulupayev, Desdemona Gunn, and Christopher. And huge thanks to Brian Tomaszek and Peter Syme, who just raised their pledges at patreon.com/DTNS. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Scott Johnson and John Wolpert from IBM to talk blockchain. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Good show.
That was fun.
That was. Thank you.
Hope I didn't get too pluggy at the end.
Not at all. No, that was fine. Totally fine.
Cool. Let us look at the titles.
What do we got, Roger?
Verizon wants a prenup. And then we have Samsung shields up. Isn't that stealing that from Steve Gibson?
Kind of, yeah.
Verizon. There's a lot of O's in there.
Okay.
RateMyLemur.com.
What's that again?
RateMyLemur. RateMyLemur.com.
Rate my lemur. Rate them.
Battle for
Rate
bottom
them.
of the Reputation League. And then there's 2 arrows up, 2 arrows down. Scrapping apps.
Scrapping apps.
That's pretty sassy.
It's pretty.
What's in
pretty
an
hot.
app? Bankruption, not my lemur.
What is up, up, down, down?
Yeah.
It's
Wait,
just the
that's it.
arrows.
But don't you need an ABA? Isn't that like the cheat code?
It's also the name of a popular YouTube channel for the wrestler in the WWE, whose name I can't think of right now, and he's one of my favorite wrestlers, and I feel bad.
Mostly. So
Xavier
who's
Woods.
got
Xavier Woods.
LemurOrNot.com, Facebook My Lemur. Lemur let you finish, but Lemur face Lemur let you finish, but Lemur face recognition should win the best new technology.
I noticed that most of the show, the chat room was trying to come up with good lemur puns.
Scrapping apps I like.
It's tough.
Scrapping apps. Them scrapping apps. I'm thinking of it as like they're scrappy, but it's really meant to be like we're getting rid of them, right?
But I don't think they'll go down without a fight. So
No, they wouldn't. Not the apps I know.
yeah, from the streets.
Well, you know,
Scraping apps.
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
it sounds more like
I
a
would
battle
mess
of
up this.
definition, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, a messaging app is an app in and of itself, but I was saying this to Tom earlier. I kind of see it as that the app is kind of, it's not mobile native because we had AIM and we had IRC and, there's been messaging apps for forever, but it feels very native in the way like a browser feels native to desktop style computing. It just kind of fits into that paradigm really well. I don't think we'll ever see a point where there's no apps.
No,
But
I agree.
Well, I mean, there's just certain things that you write, and for the more popular things that you can integrate into an OS to make it more seamless, I totally see it. But at the same time, I mean, there's things like, help me tune my guitar app, or, there's a number of things that are task specific that might not be, I don't know, as seamless into that.
Well, it's software. I mean, we forget that apps are just, a
It's just-
weird sort of implementation of something we've been doing since the 80s.
Programs, you used to call them programs.
Yeah, programs.
Programs user.
Well, I mean, programs predate the 80s too, but I'm thinking of the 80s as sort of the blossoming of like, oh, we can get programs and put them on our computers.
You double click on this.
Well, I mean, like, will it be something like? No, I've always wondered why Android didn't go with the what do they call it? When you add something to Chrome, where the extension? What's their term for extensions? Extensions.
I think it is extension.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just have an extension to the OS. Oh, you want to add this functionality? This plugin, this extension.
Well, that's going to be really weird when we all live in virtual assistant world, and then there's going to be all the news stories about all the kids that told Google Home to activate the Angry Birds AI program that costs, $50 a month or something like that, because you know there's going to be paid add-ons for these services at some point, and it's going to be too
it's going to be the same story as with the App Store, right? Like, you need better child protection mechanisms.
It'll be like, whoops, sorry, yeah.
Wabbit Magic said add-ons. I think that's it. Wabbit.
Firefox calls them add-ons, yeah.
So,
They make you reboot, or they used to.
that's kind of cool. I mean, I have one that my antivirus puts in.
I think the virtual personal assistant may short circuit the messaging app's dominance, because if it gets good enough, you can do your messaging with that, right? And whether you're talking to it or typing, you can type with Cortana, you can type with Siri. If it's got just a good interface where you're like, tell Rich blah 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 blah, and then it goes, oh, we know Rich is on WhatsApp, but then I say tell Eileen, like, oh, he always talks to Eileen on SMS, and then I don't have to think about where to contact someone.
Yeah, but I think some people would be a little unnerved with the lack of control. Like, well, I'm only supposed to contact this person on this particular platform.
Yeah, but your virtual personal assistant makes sure that you do that, right? It may be the first time you say contact Roger. It's I see Roger is listed as a contact in these 3 apps. Which one should I use? And then I say, always use WhatsApp, because Roger gets really upset if I don't use WhatsApp, which is not true, but
Typical Roger.
yeah.
Upset. Well, I typically get upset. But.
And then it's like, okay, got that down. And then if you ever need to make an exception, you'll say, send a message to Roger in SMS instead. And it should know, like, oh, you mean the text messaging app. Oh, you mean iMessage. Oh,
eventually, all those
Allo.
things will go. It'll just be like back to like channels on a radio.
Exactly.
Like, we'll just build the back end. You connect on this port using this protocol, and it's set.
That's what I'm thinking.
I do also think that sometimes, like, the lack of app enthusiasm is also that just people are bored with smartphones now.
Well,
they're not new.
Yeah. And
oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
Stop being polite. Make a point.
Oh.
No. Never.
Oh no,
Rich,
I'm just saying, like, I think apps have gotten to the point of maturity where it's kind of like, there's for some people there's certain apps are indispensable to their lives, but because it's so prevalent and so ubiquitous, they don't really think about it in that way anymore, where, oh, I need to download the latest and greatest. It's like, I got all the ones I need, and they carry me through the day doing what they need to do.
Unlike wearables, we've figured out what we want to do with smartphones, and I think that's also part. I mean, like, you could argue, like, the last, like, big disruption was Uber and ride sharing and that kind of stuff. And then since then, I mean, I'm sure there are a billion different apps that everyone loves, and I'm not disparaging those. But in terms of like a massive disruption that the smartphone specifically caused, I think we kind of, at least right now, we think we figured it out. I'm not saying we have.
Well, yeah, there was a guy, and I wish I could remember who was doing this. Used to work for one of the Mac blogs, who would go around. It might have been Adam Christensen, actually. I can't remember for sure, but he would just say, like, what apps are on your home screen? Let's just take a tour of your home screen. And you think, well, everybody's going to have the same apps, but that's not true. Everybody usually has the phone app on their home screen, but beyond that, some people have email on a second screen and weird stuff like that. So it's very telling, I think, to look at, like, what are the things that you decided to have on your first screen. Those are the things that you definitely need to have access to. And I think those, if you look at them, you're not going to see a lot of really new disruptive apps. You're going to see apps that you've been using for a long time.
The apps I have, it's weird. They're like all the standard social messaging and
right.
Have the standard social messaging, email. I have a CC cleaner. I have maps. I have my calendar or the Play Store.
CC cleaner on your main screen.
Yeah,
interesting. You do a lot of cleaning.
I try to not download as much, but since I'm taking more photos, I need to start deleting. But then I keep all my utilities on, like, the third screen. I keep all my financial stuff on the fourth screen.
Well, I use the launcher for. I have no idea where any of my apps are other than the ones in the bottom row. I just always use the launcher for everything. I'm a weirdo, I guess. My one friend was making fun of me for it, but I'm like, why do I don't want to dedicate muscle memory to this because I only need to remember this one thing and then just type MA and it's always going to be maps.
Yeah. I use search quite a bit to launch apps if they're not on my home screen. My home screen is calendar, messages, camera, light bulbs, Instagram, Audible, podcasts, Nest, Twitter, 2 running apps for when I run, Kindle, TripIt, Feedly, Waze, Snapchat, Authenticator, Amazon Voice Services app, Slack, music, Spanish, a Spanish learning language app, the RTV app from Spanish television, and Sidereel. And then down in my dock is settings, phone, browser, and email.
That's what I forgot. Oh no, I have Feedly right here. Oh,
gotta have
no.
Feedly.
No, come back.
I got
But
Slack,
basically, I
that's
end
all
up
I
putting
need.
whatever apps I know I use every day, I put them up on that main screen. And then there's a bunch of apps I use a lot on the second screen. And sometimes I go through and I'm like, you know what? I'm not using this every day anymore. I'm going to put something else in there.
It's very empowering.
Yeah, but have like 4 home screens.
Yeah, that's true.
The problem is now it's just basically the apps screen because you know what I mean. You just transfer them all over.
I tell you, I use these widgets all the time, says no one.
I used to use widgets, but the only widgets I ever keep using is weather.
I use the TripIt widget because it will make sure I know when my next trip is because it's right there on my tablet every morning. That's the only widget I keep up.
I tell you, the Echo has ruined me for weather apps because I'm just like running around like I'm in the Starship Enterprise, just demanding to know the weather as I make my coffee.
Computer.
Yeah. That could wake up someone's thing. Don't say that word.
Now you're right. You're right. Did you change yours?
No. That does not pass the spousal approval factor.
No? Oh, that's too bad.
So are we going with scrapping apps or?
We are. We have gone with scrapping apps. Actually, I just posted the show. So.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Scrapping apps.
Scrappy Doo apps.
There's. They're getting scrappy. Thanks everybody for watching. It was an excellent time hanging out with you. Thanks again, Rich. And we will talk to you tomorrow with John Wolpert and Scott Johnson.
Yes.
Yes.